Welcome to another episode of Tres Leches Radio. Is yours truly, Mr. Rad Soul, representing 1/3 of the team. Gentlemen, say what's up.
These stacks, we are back in the Zoom studio.
Oh,
let's go.
And as always, the guy was good with it. What we got on the itinerary tonight, Rad? So,
before we jump into that, as always, thank you guys for tuning in. Whether it's live or on YouTube, as always, we are Tres Leches Radio on all social media platforms. And we're also streaming on Amazon Music and Spotify. So follow us, comment, let us know what you think. With that said, we've got an interesting one today. Plan to ruffle feathers. With hip hop music and music in general, one of the biggest debates that will always occur is whether or not an album is a classic. This happens in any genre, right? It's art. We oftentimes defend the albums we love endlessly. But what about the albums that have reached universal classic acclaim that you just don't agree with, right? We've had these conversations in different Facebook groups over the years, message boards and what have you. And again, these albums that achieve universal classic acclaim that you just don't agree with, despite having given it an unbiased chance. And what if you could swap those albums that you don't think, merit that classic status out with albums you felt that were better and didn't get that just due? So today we're going to be doing just that. But before we even get into that, we're going to first establish, I want to throw out to you guys, what defines a classic album to you guys, right? When you say, yo, this is a classic, what are there any common themes that you've noticed? Like when you look at maybe your most 5 favorite albums or whatever, is there a common denominator there that says that's why this is a classic?
I would say for me, first off, you go with the sound part, which is dope beats, dope rhymes. That's a pretty essential part of it. The next is like, is it a full play? Is it a full listen? Is it like a no skips? The third to me would be like impact, kind of the social commentary. I put those kind of like one in the same. And that's like the last tier I would do. And then like you got like that other category, like that bonus category, which is like the timing, the timing of the record. And like those 4 to 5 things to me is what keeps me sound and judging a classic album from like when I started listening to music to now.
Yeah.
What about you, Mr. Brensmatic?
B-Stack was pretty much on point. One thing I'll also say too, not only with the timing, and timing could be like maybe based off promotional push, singles or whatever, but also timing as far as like the climate of what's going on currently. You might have a good theme, good topic, beats, whatever, but if the vibe is not even right for it, that makes so much of a difference. So I think timing, everything, and when it's not so much you, and we'll kind of talk about, I guess, as you mentioned, like, especially we talk about generational gaps. Like when your peers come out, like your peers that you respect, your elders, and they say, hey, this is some dope material versus maybe you saying it or somebody saying within a week. You gotta let it marinate. You know what I mean? Definitely gotta let it marinate. But when your peers, after you say, like, it Stacks came out of the thing, I'm like, you know what? I was in front to back and like everything was sound, point. I see the vision, how you painted those pictures. That to me is like the most point, even beyond the fans, when you have your rap peers tell you, like, yo, you dropped something special, like this is monumental. Right. I think that's when you really know, because they don't have to go out of the way, because we know hip hop's competition. But for one of your adversaries to come out and he's like, yo, I don't bang with you like that, but what you drop right there, that right there, made me have to rewrite half my whole album. That's off the strength of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Willow just was like, I gotta rewrite my whole thing. She just left.
I know. Ooh, she's like, I can handle this.
And I think that ties into like what you said, right? Brandon, you said impact. And like the analogy I use is like, when I say impact, like you ever seen somebody, whether you read a story or somebody in real life who once they had kids, that their life changed, that they just started to live differently because simply that existence was life changing. That to me is what like when I say impact, like an album has to impact me like that, where its existence alters maybe the way I may think about something or just the way I enjoy music or interpret music, which is why I think, like you won't see me give out that classic designation, and neither do you guys, right? We don't just throw them out there like that. Like an album really has to be exceptional. You know what I mean? That's why I don't agree the Sky Zoo has 6 classics. So
Hell no.
Exactly. And that's exactly what you said on the thing that we sent too. You hell no.
Right. See? That means I wasn't lying, people.
Yeah, you were consistent with that. You know what's one thing that gets attributed to classic albums that I don't know I fully agree with, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, is I don't agree that a classic always has to change the game. And even though that's a good accolade to have associated with your album, because there are albums that are classics and did impact the game to the point where it altered the game. You know, I don't think that like, for example, all right, so today's episode is called It Was Rewritten. The actual album, It Was Written, right? That's what like the title's based off of. To me, that's known as a classic album. I don't think that album changed the game. Illmatic changed the game, right? But It Was Written is still a classic. Illmatic is a classic that also changed the game. So that's like an example I use of you can be classic without changing the game. Because I know some people will use that in there, but I'm like, yo, you would have a lot less projects if the game had to change like that with every release. So I don't. Go ahead.
I agree with that. Yeah, because there was predecessors to that style of music that Nas was doing already.
And it's still a classic. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. I agree with that. And I was thinking in my head Diggable Planet's first 2 albums are classics. Yeah. You know, but I don't think, and this is controversial, but I don't think they changed the game either. There was other people's tried,
they felt very low end theory a little bit, like not completely, but yeah, like the jazz influence.
Yeah, like there was already people that they were standing on their shoulders to get that content out. So I agree. Like Diggable Planet's got 2 classic albums, but I don't think it changed the game really.
Yeah, and that's gonna tie into there's another part where we say like why maybe like why albums maybe that we felt are classic, were overlooked, right? But even like on an independent level, right? There's independent albums that we've probably heard over the years that might have been the best album of that year, but won't change the game because they're independent and don't get the press that a major does. So that's just, again, like I don't think a classic necessarily has to change the game, but if you do change the game, then your classic is like a level 10 classic. Like, yo, you hit every freaking mark. You know what I mean? I would say that, and pretty much, yeah, you guys said everything. I'm big on the sound, the lyrics. Me and there might be some controversy to this. I think subject matter helps, but I've said before, I've heard classic gangster rap albums and I've heard whack weak woke albums. So what I'm saying is you could have the content, but if you can't execute on that content, you won't necessarily have the classic or the well-received album just because you covered a certain topic that's like positive. You have to have the musicianship to it. You got to still be an artist to be able to say, how do I get this message to them musically and enjoyable? And, that the lyrics like you're quoting and stuff, and it's got to age well, so, and obviously like obvious examples of classics, like Paid in Full, 36 Chambers, B, Illmatic, Doggy Style, Supreme Clientele, and so on, right? Ready to Die, all those, right? Those are examples from like different eras of albums that A, stood the test of time, B, are still in the conversation, right? They haven't been, they're cemented, right? But let me ask you guys, do you feel that there's a time frame that needs to pass? Like Renzo, you kind of said something about like kind of like the aging statement. Do you feel there needs to be a certain amount of time in your mind that passes before you can say, yo, this is a classic? Like, when do you know an album is like, we know what makes a classic, but when do you know a classic is a classic?
And that's why I think some of it's generational, just because I'm also looking on a technological standpoint. So we're 80s babies who then grew up on hip hop, the 80s, 90s, 2000s, so forth. But like when we heard the music, it's not like Spotify, it's not like Tidal where you got like 10, 20 albums dropping this week. We got artists dropping multiple projects. Like Biggie had 2 projects, and in the second project, he was gone by the time it came out, so we actually had time to digest the music. go back, rewind. When we're talking like metaphors, similes,
Literal
we might need to catch the
rewind.
first one. Yeah,
Literal rewind,
exactly,
bro. Like a
literal
button.
rewind.
Yeah.
So we had more time to digest it. Like you got a rapper like Currency who drops like 12 projects, a project a
Brandon
month.
said, I can't keep up with that.
Exactly. I could tell you have Currency projects.
It's overloading. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Heavily consistent, but it's just too much for me to digest. Where you know we're in different hip hop groups on Facebook where like we're still listening to this one album and they're already talking about 10 albums later. Like, how can you really judge or review that album within 2 days or within 48 hours? Like to me, some of the stuff you got it might be 6 months, it might be a couple of years for you to truly appreciate, especially if you're younger, you can't really appreciate, or if you're just in a different state of mind, you might be depressed and what might have been a great album didn't relate to you just because of where you were at personally at that point. First, when you're outside of that, then you're like, oh, I see what this person was talking about relaying. And I don't really think you get that in the streaming era as much, especially somebody who's coming out constantly. You know, it's almost like microwave versus cooked food, from scratch.
Those gourmet burgers, Brandon.
Yeah.
The extra $4. But let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like, okay, here's a one album I know we all agree on. Like Commons B, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember like when you first heard it, did you feel like, yo, this is something different? Like, do you remember, besides obviously enjoying the music, did you feel like, yo, this is probably going to be a classic? This is like, how did you, like, you know what I mean? Like, did you have that word anywhere in your mind after having like played it maybe a couple times?
I think when something's special.
Yes.
I think we all knew B was special when it came out. We also were a little older too, so we had the advantage of like a mind and sound.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As versus when Pun came out, we all just hyped like, oh, yo, this is crazy. Like I really didn't know that was a classic until late. Like, didn't understand, I'll say, until later. But I knew Capital Punishment was a classic. Later. But with B, I knew it was special. To answer your original question, I would say 5 years is the number that I figured out in my head, because it gives enough time for the trend and the wave to go away, and for something.
Oh, I like that. Happen. I like that.
Yeah.
It exits the hype.
Right. And can that album still stand? People still care. Do those songs still have impact? Do those lyrics still have power? I was looking at Michael Jackson's Off the Wall, came out in 79, and Thriller comes out in 82. So like, Off the Wall, like now that's a classic, but like in 79, it was just a special record. Michael Jackson, he's a special guy.
It lives in Thriller's shadow. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we forget about
as good as the album was. Yeah, it's the backseat, it's the passenger.
Right.
At this point.
Right. But it wasn't even considered a classic until Thriller, and then like people went back, like, Off the Wall, I guess. I mean, at that point, you had to anoint it a classic.
And that was him and Quincy Jones then too.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. They were getting their Guru and Primo on right there. You know what I'm saying? Like Gangstar and Pop Star. There you go. I think time-wise, like years ago, I remember feeling like, and I don't know why this number popped in my head. I don't know why. I remember feeling like I wasn't allowed to call a classic until like 10 years passed. But what you just said, by the time 5 years has passed, the hype of that moment, that generation has shifted to the point where you could probably make that determination maybe even at the 5-year mark. Because like you said it, like the
especially with hip hop,
its era, it changes even probably less than every 5 years. But 5 years is definitely, like whoever was on top 5 years ago, the likelihood of them being on top 5 or just having a popularity, you could be, 5 years is like an eternity in hip hop.
No doubt. Because it's still young.
Yeah.
Renz,
I know. Were you about to say something?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with everything that was being said.
Oh my bad. I thought I was.
I think you want to say that Vinny Betty Vici is. No, I'm
Irv Gotti. Damn, we need a soundboard, man.
Oh man.
All right, so you know what? And then this next one, before we get to like the music part, is, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but it was relevant to this on the Busta Rhymes episode. Can you be labeled a GOAT without a classic album to your name?
Yes. It's harder, obviously, if you don't have that classic to stand by. But we talked about it in the Busta Rhymes episode, especially that when you look at his overall body of work, he might not have that sound classic, but if we talk about consistency, we talk about what he does to people's remixes to the point where we don't even want to listen to the original version anymore. Like, what this guy brings to the table. And I don't think we'll ever have another Busta Rhymes. Like, you might have people influence, might have a certain style, but I don't think you want to ever have that package deal like a Busta Rhymes. Like, he's a
specific energy.
He's a once in a generational or once in a lifetime type of entity, within the culture, and that's gonna sit there, period. Regardless.
So basically, he's gotten to the finals. He just never got the chip. It's probably the analogy, right? There's a lot of artists, right? Like they were, they can make the playoffs, they can make it to the final dance, but they don't, they don't get the ring. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's what it is. And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's players in sports that become Hall of Famers that have no championships, but they were still great at what they did. And I agree with you. Yes, you can't be a GOAT without a classic. It's just the classic are the rings. You know what I mean? That's just like that really is just like the icing on the cake.
I agree. In my head, the modern day person I had in my head was Chris Brown. Me and Zoe had this conversation like 5 summers ago, with a certain female. And I say woman because you can't say female now.
Yeah, we was about to get leches canceled.
It's about to be he takes a choice.
But he's mixed rap with R&B at this point, right? So I think it's fair to put his name out there. But I think for the new guys, Chris Brown is going to be a GOAT. Like he is. Does he have a classic album? No. But he's going to be like what I call a greatest hits artist. He's been
very popular for a while.
Yeah, he has a lot of favorable songs, right? That last decades. Similar to Busta Rhymes. Like Busta Rhymes, in my opinion, Busta Rhymes has a classic, but I will agree full stance that he doesn't have that hip hop quintessential classic.
Universal one that everybody's like, yo, this one. He don't have a beat. He don't have a beat to his name. Like,
no, you don't have Illmatic. But and Chris Brown is like he's the answer to this question. Like he's a GOAT without a classic for newer people.
Yeah. All right. So you know what? Now we're gonna take it up on another level, right? So, one of the things we're gonna do right now, now that we kind of like said, okay, this is what we consider classic. We all kind of have like a similar understanding of what we feel is a classic album. So over the years, now we've had conversations, whether we were at barbecues or just in the DMs or whatever, where it's just like, yo, I don't see the hype with that album, right? Now, some of these albums we've mentioned have gone as far as to get that universal classic acclaim. Like we've had these conversations at different points in time. So my question, and anybody could go first, is what are 2 albums that since in any era, since we were born to now, that are deemed classics, whether we like them or not, that you just feel like, for you, it's just like, I don't see the hype. I don't see it. Any one of y'all can throw one out.
You want to go or you want
to? Yeah, you got it, bro. You got it.
All right. So, and it's funny, right before we got on live, we were talking about great, I was talking about classics, great, and then just overrated, or even classics, quote unquote, but they were bad.
So it's like a tier, right? Classic, great, good, and then just this is trash. Like,
and then it can be overrated even on the highest levels, lowest. And it was hard for me because last night I'm thinking, okay, here's X, Y, and Z who are not classic albums, but they're still great albums. And then there's, to me, people who deem whether it's our generation or not, say, hey, this is a classic album. I'm looking at like, I don't even think it's a great album. Or I don't even think it was good, but maybe just based off the circumstances that it was able to propel on due to the right circumstances, opportunity, so to speak. So for me, I was looking at different like 90s hip hop, even 2000s, wherever, where I said, hey, it's not be a classic, but I can't argue with somebody who thinks it's a classic because it's still overall a great album. So for me, a lot of stuff I had to kind of take off my list because I'm like, It might not be classic, but it's still classic somebody else, and there's enough where you can make a legitimate argument. So,
well, all of these are going to be classics to like the masses, right?
to
This
some,
is just us kind of saying, okay, like, you know.
Well, IQ wise, I don't trust everybody.
But that's what I'm saying, right? So these are the universal ones, but like, do we agree with publications that oftentimes have agendas and deals with labels, right?
Yeah, of course.
So what's your first one?
So for me, and it's all going to be within the same umbrella, with that Young Money, Cash Money. But first one for me is Lil Wayne's Carter 2.
Oh,
Yes, I agree.
Man, how did I not think about that?
Yeah, and for one, if you saw how much he was emulating Jay-Z with the Lifetime, with the album
down
covers,
to the album covers,
But for me, more than anything, and I think we talked about it a couple of different episodes. Hang Up the Mic, for example. But like when Wayne came out, and I tell people this, like I can't say Wayne doesn't have bars because he does. That was never an issue with Lil Wayne, especially as he came more into the franchise player. But does he have substance behind the bars? When we talking about like a Nas, when we're talking about like a Jay-Z, we're talking about like a Rakim, and a lot of that is a big no. I think what benefited Wayne, more than anything, was that he had no competition within his peer group. Like we still had Jay, we still had Nas, we had Common B dropping around at the same time.
But they're now post-prime at that time,
Yeah, and Wayne is like, he started young. His competition is more like a Joel Santana. You know what I mean? Hey, you know what I mean? Some of the Southwest, Slim Thug, those type of guys. And they didn't have good quality albums. We're talking about ringtone era. There were no real good quality albums from from his age group. So for me, he had media core material, but that the bar was set so low, he didn't have to do much for people to say, oh my gosh, like he is mind blown with this, that, because nobody was really rapping at that point.
I think that album's too long too, man. Like,
that
album is just, that's like the one that all the Lil Wayne fans be like, yo, that's the one that's his Illmatic. And I listened to it and I'm like, look, it's not, and just for anybody listening, like, it's not that it has to sound like whatever album we use as an analogy. We're just trying to say, does it have that certain standard? Does it have that certain polish to it? And like, there's enjoyable music on C2, but it doesn't sit at the Hall of Fame table.
Nowhere near it, and that's my thing. Like there's good cuts, but nothing I could go back to like, oh man, like woo, like I don't get that emotion from it.
That was a great pick. That's a great selection. I didn't even think about Lil Wayne Carter 2. The one thing I think we can't deny though is the impact of that album.
Oh yeah, the impact.
It built his stock up. But once he started to do less like Manny Fresh, and he started to like work with different producers, none of us could deny, because it's just us citing history at this point. His stock rose. And it continued to rise after that.
Impact on Carter 2 was phenomenal. But I agree though. I agree. In the moment though, I knew, like, I'm like, oh, y'all, this is crazy. Like y'all giving this way too much.
I think that came out like 04, 05. I want to
maybe a little later.
Because Carter 3 was 08. Because I remember Carter 3 was like 06. So it was
07.
Okay.
But it goes back to what I said. The bar was set so low though. The expectation, just because it was so much trash material. Like I say, he had to do much for it to have the impact that it had, because you can't get no lower than what it was in some of those moments
at that point.
And that was the era where like the iTunes era was where like people were becoming more singles driven artists, because you could make more money. You could put out a trash 10 track album, but you got that one hit, and like you saw a lot more of that there. I agree with that pick. C2. Again, I don't think it's bad, but I definitely don't think it sits at the conversation. Not at all.
Yeah.
No. All right, man. So I struggle with this category because I do feel like a lot of the albums that are classics, they got it. They deserve it.
Every single one of them?
Hell no.
So what we want to hear are the hell no's. That's what we want to hear at B-Stacks.
All right. So what? So here's my thing though. I'm gonna just say, do y'all think these albums are classic before I even run them down? So like 444, Jadakiss first album, Kiss the Game Goodbye, Watch the Throne, Kanye and Jay.
Well, those two Jay ones, they're not deemed classics.
Okay.
I will say that, like, I think 444 is overrated. Renzo seen me argue with people online about that, but I will say
South
they're
Speed,
not deemed it.
Gangsta in the Jungle.
I've never seen the classic hype on that one.
Okay.
I had like,
Yeah, me too.
but I think it's regional. But like, no, I have people who fight you tooth and nail that will say that's
there's
a classic
people.
album.
Yeah, they'll die on a hill for that one. Of all the albums you just said,
yeah,
that first Styles P, I've heard people say for years classic, and I'm like, it's not bad, but
yeah, I think that was one of my albums where it was too long. If you took it down like 8-9 tracks, you might have an argument. But like I said, we'll probably do a podcast one day. But I think she had the best debut album. But that's neither here nor there. Though.
Oh, we got to do that Locked episode. Yep.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. So, I just went. I went through albums that I felt that people like. I went for the streets. I'm not. Forget the internet. You know what I mean? I went for like, what are those albums that people was talking about in the streets that was going back and forth? Like, what's hot? What's what's really that work? And so I guess the one I will put out would be, and this one, I mean, I like it, you know what I mean? But I don't know if it gets the 5 micer. But I would say from Gangstar. So yeah.
Wow. I wasn't expecting any Gangstar slander. I was ready for you guys to just say every Jay-Z album.
Right.
It's a love-hate relationship.
Well, which Gangstar album? Now I gotta know.
So this is a Primo produced record. So I gotta respect these brothers because I gotta like give them their full props because Malachi the Nutcracker, and damn. It was a Gangstar Foundation album.
Okay.
Hold up, come back to me.
All right, yeah. No, I don't put the gun to your head. All right, so I'll pick mine right now. All right. Renz, you've definitely heard me talk about this one because you've just known me that long, right?
Yeah.
So my choice for an album that got and to use Brandon's example, like especially like in the quote unquote like streets, right, or like the internet, that was like this album got so much like word of mouth. Clip's second album, Hell Hath No Fury. And Renzo, you've heard me. I've said probably since back then. It came out in 2006. Yeah. I don't hear how this album is a classic, and this is my reasoning, right? Like I don't want to just like sound like I'm throwing shade just cause, right? For one, I like Clips as rappers. For two, I love the Neptunes as production team. I've never felt they were the perfect marriage together outside of the obvious hits, right? Their hits can't be denied. Grindin', When the Last Time, all of that, Mr. Me Too. But with Hell Hath No Fury, I've always said, and even when I listened to it recently, incredibly mediocre production. And I think that's such a big attribute. When you think of the classics that we've been citing throughout this episode and just through different conversations, there's no way, and Neptunes are legendary producers, that this album off beats alone sits at a table with the Bees, the Illmatics, and just, the College Dropouts and just all of that. I think the Neptunes, it sounds like they gave them throwaways. Ironically, I feel like these beats are undercooked and given to rappers who brag about how well they cook and what it does for their pockets and, their sex life. The beats on that album, because I can't take anything away from Clips at all. Like, I think they're witty as shit. They're incredibly, they have like the D-boy raps down packed. But if you're going to do an album on a topic that is very used and abused, right? Like the drug raps, that's nothing new. And you're doing it over production that is really not that exciting. I don't see how that album is a class. I don't even think that was the best album or top 5 of that year. But that album is constantly cited. You look it up on like different forums and whatnot. That one gets all the classic props.
But don't you feel like that? I correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't that album come out like a year later than what it was supposed to?
Well, so they had the label politic issue with Jive at that point. This is around when Justin Timberlake came out, because Pharrell produced that album, and they were trying to get the album pushed up. So yeah, it was like maybe 1 to 2 years late, due to the label politics. One thing I'll say is this. And it's
any year it comes out, I think the beats suck. Just me speaking. I think any year it comes out, the beats are under. Let me sound less hater and more analytical. I think the beats are undercooked, especially when the Neptunes can do the like the mood they were going for. They can do the kind of beats they can produce it. I just don't think they really delivered on that album. But my bad. Go ahead, Renz.
No, you good, you good. It's funny because it made me think about the 2 Cents podcast when I think we did the albums. I think it was 06.
2 Cents.
You know, and y'all both were looking at me like wide-eyed because I actually had Hell Hath No Fury as my #1 album of that year. Now,
shit!
Now, wow. I did. You can bring it back. Now, I won't say it's a classic, but here's my thing, and I'll talk about the production real quick. I don't want to drag it too long. Like, I think on paper, based off what we know for the Neptunes, that, as you mentioned, I would agree, especially if I wasn't, know about what Clips was, to know about what Neptunes was, that was undercooked in that respect, especially when we know what they can do, especially in their heyday.
They got the range.
What I saw and that's how I looked at the album differently, that it was almost, for better or worse, because I would still agree to a certain degree they were almost on like a Nas level thing. Because people say Nas, and I don't think it's bad as people make it out. But with that mindset, say, hey, Nas will know how good pick good beats, and argument that he's worried about, hey, how you gonna feel the lyrics? How are the lyrics gonna deliver to you? Because I'm making the song, the beat's not making the song. And I felt like Hell Hath No Fury had that mindset, saying, hey, we're not looking for the best beats. We're looking for beats that will complement, but the beat or songs say, hey, this could have been a beat I tapped on a drum board that was terrible, but it was still a hot song just based off the lyrics. And that's how I always saw that. Because honestly, I'll put that over the first album. The third album,
the third one's my favorite
to
one.
me, it was like the most balanced.
Yes,
but I like
because the Neptunes let off the gas a little bit. Like they had like Sean C. LV, like
LV, Kanye. Kanye was obviously on there. But like I like the dark feel of that, and I appreciated the dark feel. Like I wasn't looking for glossy or even top A. Like I was looking for that dirty, like you didn't want Undercooked, but I appreciate the Undercooked because it does that mood that it gave me. Especially because if you knew how long the delays were. So it reflected on the delay, it reflected on their anger. It's almost saying that, hey, we're not going to give you a grind. We're not going to give you this. This is what you gave us. We're going to give the streets what they want, but how we're feeling right now. We're not going to gloss it over. We're not going to paint you high with, we're pissed off. We're not happy. We don't have the biggest budget, so it's not going to reflect the biggest budget. You know what I mean? That's how I saw that out.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I wasn't looking for like the video game sound beats or whatever. Like, I think, for example, like when like a stripped down beat, like when Pharrell did a Blue Magic for Jay-Z. I think that's an example of a stripped down beat that doesn't sound like a throwaway, but it also doesn't sound like he's chasing a top 40 beat. And let me ask you guys this. Is there any albums that you guys have in your personal all-time favorites that you deem classics, no matter what anyone says, that have production? Or no, part of the reason you like it is because, they got the production is hitting. Because that's how it is for me. When I like for a classic album, like I love the production. You know what I mean? Like it's the kind of beats where if somebody goes up to Hot 97 and freestyle, they might use one of those beats. And I don't think, and that's my big gripe with Hell Hath No Fury. I think like me thinking is overrated.
I want to apologize to DJ Premier real quick.
Oh, you got yours? You got it?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm ready.
All right, man.
I was born ready.
So I was gonna go with Group Home, Living Proof, but then I look back. I look at the tracks like, nah, man, that's a classic. I'm sorry. They just didn't have the rapping ability, but Primo laced them with. This is to answer your question, Ray, but it's the inverse. Like the beats were so good on Living Proof Group Home album.
Yeah.
It made it a class. I'm sorry, Malachi and the Nutcracker, they're not good rappers, man. You know what I mean? Gangstar Foundation, Big Chubb, or Guru, but I'm sorry, they're not good rappers, man. But like Primo gave them such good production. Like Primo was, on 95, Primo was just lightning. That it gives that album a classic. But the album that I will say that I don't think it holds up is and at the time it had the impact value, but I'm gonna say Get Rich or Die Trying. I don't think that. I think now looking back, that's like a 4-star album. I don't think it's a 5-star album.
I don't disagree. Its moment was huge.
Timing was amazing.
Perfect.
I would put a lot of. I like that album, but there are a lot of albums I will put before it.
It don't have that, like when you say, Ray, can I put it up to the Pete Rock CL Smooth? Can I put it up to the Chronic? Can I put it up to Doggy Style? Can I put it up to even Kanye's Dark Twisted Fantasy? Whatever you want to do with Kanye, because I think Kanye got a bunch. But like, I don't think it goes with those, you know, arts of work.
That it doesn't sit at that table. That it's just
not even with B.
It's here, but that's the thing. Moments will, and that's why I think time matters. And like I said, you probably have you've had my favorite analogy today easily was 5 years goes by, 50 Cent ain't where he once was, is Get Rich or Die Trying. Now that the moment is over, is Get Rich still the classic that it was made to be, you know? I like the album, but I don't disagree with that choice, honestly. I really don't.
Yeah, and I loved it at the time, bro. I banged it, you know, all the time.
And I think it was more like a momentum situation.
Yeah,
you know, the time,
tidal
you know,
wave,
the beef, you know, underdog status, everything. I think that was such a momentum thing because even when
he deserved it. He deserved it.
You know, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, he overcame a lot of shit.
And even then, and even years later, I just felt like great album, but there's no defining point that gives it the extra bump into that to get into that table. And that's all I felt like that. Then come like there's stuff on there that you can't deny because you felt the hunger, you felt, you know, the desperation, everything.
What Up
there.
Gangsta is one of the toughest intros ever. Wow.
Oh, easily. Yo, what you play at any club, it don't even have to be a hip hop club. They know what's about to go down, you know. Many men, you know, and like there's certain stuff you can't deny from that album. It might have its little slip ups, but certain stuff, but like not to the point where you can say it's automatic. We say automatic. We say reasonable doubt, automatic. We say capital punishment, like we don't have to think, second guess it. Even
that's a good way to say, yeah, because I Get Rich or Die Trying, like I like the album. I don't think it's a bad album, but I do, I kind of, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's like, and before we move on, Get Rich or Die Trying is like, it's like a jewel in disguise. You know what I mean? Because it could get by you real quick if you like grab it real fast and assess it. You're like, oh, you don't really match up to the rest.
Yeah, but that it had a huge moment.
The moment was crazy.
Yeah.
All right, no, solid choice. So all right, so now the second one, Renz, what was your second one?
Second one to me, it was more like, and I don't even want to mention it, but it just comes to what we were talking about before, like this the streaming era and this like maybe just a lack of good music on at least on a radio level. You know, and that's Drake's Take Care, because for any Drake fan or even somebody who's a mild Drake fan, they'll even say, hey, that was a classic right there. That was Drake at his pinnacle, and everything else. You know, that's the one they push more than any album. And it's like I listened to the album, and to me, it's just that's pretty much Drake's history. Like, if we're talking about hits, if we're just talking about a pure hits perspective, you know, he's a hit goat. If we're talking about his perspective, like there's the songs there, but then other songs it's just that it's so sappy, or it's like we can't take you seriously, you know, as an artist at this point. And you don't have to be the greatest lyricist in the world. We can list art, you know, hip hop artists where it's like, oh, they don't have the bars, but like the X factors that they bring to the table. Like Drake to me is just like he's somebody you just want to punch in the face. You know, even because you know, it's
like
DMX, just there, like you know, yeah.
DMX
like,
said it right. He's like,
yo,
I don't like his haircut.
Yeah, that's the energy that's right there for Drake.
The Drake story has always been kind of like I think he has a solid ear for beats. I like his production crew, but I've always felt like as an artist, like the Drake experience, you know, there's different type of vibes that artists can induce in you, right? MOP ain't gonna do for you the same thing that, you know, Common's gonna do, you know, and you know, so on, right? People have different lanes, but with Drake, you know, again, there's songs of his I like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just as a whole, his story just isn't one where I'm like, yeah, like it's not one I'm able to really get behind. Even when I like the production or that was a solid verse or whatever, it doesn't go past the point for me. Exactly. But Take Care is the one that they definitely try to push as his classic. That shit's also like over 80 minutes long too. Like it's very hard to have a classic that's, I mean, look, Biggie did it with, Life After Death. That's a double album. Pac did it with All Eyes on Me. But yeah, the Take Care, I agree with that. I don't think Drake has any classics, to be honest.
No, he's the greatest great value, ever. And that's how I look at Drake, because he's the pure example of, I will capitalize off whatever the flavor of the month is. If what I mean, if we're doing this, if we're doing, the Southern Lean, Houston style music, I will master that to the point where it might not be the greatest, but it's good enough, because the rest of the region or rest of the other countries don't know what that sound is. What I mean? If it's, the Caribbean sound effect, it's some patois, I'll do enough that you say, he knows that lingo. He's about that life. So he's the greatest great value rapper there is, as far as what is the hot sound, what is a good tune for you to buy into, to the point where, hey, he knows what's going on. And it's borderline culture vulture. What I mean?
Bargain bin bars.
Yeah. But he does it in a way where it's still acceptable. So that's how I look at Drake overall, but especially, with that album, Take Care.
Okay. I ain't mad at that. B-Stacks, you want me to go, or you got one? You got one in the chamber?
Man, I've been looking at Rick Ross's catalog here, bro.
Oh.
Probably best ears for beats, though. I will never deny.
You're looking at that lemon pepper.
I'm looking at his I don't rock with Wiki. We do Discogs over here, people. You Wikipedian heads, you ain't official, man. You got to go to Discogs. But Rick Ross, I don't know. Like I said, I'm going off of what I'm hearing from the streets, from people, conversations and stuff. Because I kind of fell out of publication value a long time ago.
Damn you, Benzino.
yeah. That's what's out for me. Between Made Man and La Bella Mafia.
God.
I said I'm done.
Yeah. So
I think I know which Rick Ross one you're gonna say, but obviously I want you say it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one that I hear a lot, because I got one that I actually would stand for, but that's not it. The deeper it's two.
Deeper than rap.
Deeper than rap, and the Teflon Don, 09 and 2010, like back to back. And it's just like, I agree with. Let me tell you, man, stepped this game up from a rapper to a master of ceremony. He made certain jumps. And I understand, and I get it that like certain people just don't come into this art form with the same premise. I get it, I understand. But like you can't, but at the same time, you can't say like, yo, my man got, this is a classic. Like, it don't work that way, yo. It doesn't work that way. Like, if you say, yo, man, I'm not an MC, I'm a rapper. You know what I mean? And then, all right, cool. You go by rapper, not MC standards. So when the outcome comes and now you get the accolades and people are showering you with praise or dispraise, when we're actually judging your content now and the structure and all these things we said at the front of this episode, like I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that when we saying, nah, bro, it's not up to snuff. So though I'm a section those two albums that I felt like were just like, I'm not gonna say piss poor, because there was some strong tracks on there. But like nowhere near to the stuff that I was hearing people talking about, like, just in my circle online and in person.
Yeah, because he's constantly put, like, especially throughout his era, like in conversations, like for that generation. And I would say, like, of all the Rick Ross albums I ever genuinely like visited, like deeper, I think Teflon Don was the one where people were like, yo, he did it. And I liked songs on there and it was short. But I don't think Rick Ross ever put out an album. Maybe he put something out for his era, which may not be saying much, that people hold in high regard. And I think that is the Deeper Than Raps and the Teflon Dons. But like that table, that one table, that doesn't matter what area you're at, I don't think he has a single album either that
No.
sits at the table. And music changes, and it's not always about old head versus, you know, young or whatever like that. There's standards can kind of be quantified and pointed out. And I do agree he has a dope ear for beats. He sometimes has like a repetitive flow for me where he pauses and stuff like that. But I agree. I don't think I don't think he ever made one that's just like, yo, like this one. This is your, you know, this could be his best album, but okay, does it go to the next level? I agree with you that I don't think he has any.
Yeah, in this case, and you kind of mentioned it where you're talking about like the repetitive flow. That's another thing about classics too. Like Clay's example, Still Mad. We won't really question that even with Braveheart Party. But we're not.
I'm glad he removed it.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
man.
you know, rapping from a backwards crime scenario, doing the one mic, like he tested different flows, he tested different like vocal tones, you know. And one thing I'll say about Ross is, to me, regardless that he got better over time, regardless, you know, how to pick your beats, he sounds the same almost every single track that you hear, from his earliest work to newest work. He became maybe more refined with the flow, but you hear a song like, oh, you can kind of guess how he's going to rap about it, especially on a song that might have a concept, and he's just like, we'll go this way just because I'm the boss, baby. You know what I mean? And we know there's a lot of examples of that, but yeah.
You know, if you know, whatever, you know, I'm giving them shade, but I give them love here. The two albums I would pick out, honestly, would be Mastermind and Port of Miami, his first album.
Yeah.
You think they're that good? You think that like that they should get like that acclaim?
I think the Port of Miami for the impact, you know, like for the sound and for that time, like a Florida-based rapper, they weren't rapping like that. You know what I mean? We talking like, you know, Trick Daddy and Below. You know what I'm saying? Like they weren't. Rick Ross was the only one rapping like that. So if anything, I think the Port of Miami album, you know, would have been that one. And then even I think Mastermind later. I think Mastermind is actually the album that like Teflon Don probably should have been. You know what I mean? As far as like his actual like lyrical skill and what we, you know, stuff we talking about here. I think it was just kind of, you know, people kind of rushed it with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably.
And the people,
I'm
not blaming him. It's the people. You know what I mean? I'm not blaming him.
Yeah, I would have to like revisit his stuff. He's not somebody I listen to regularly. But I know that what's it called? A lot of people, at the very least, even if he didn't have a consensus classic, there have definitely been, like, when you look at the conversations in message boards and on forums, there are a lot of people who like his catalog. You know what I mean? I've definitely seen that. He's not someone that gets a lot of shade for his catalog. I will definitely say that. So that's definitely one of those where I kind of like mentally know. I was like, I got to go through them, like, you know, and I want to just kind of see like where they're hitting me now in 2021.
Right. Right.
All right. My next one is definitely, you guys will not agree with me. I'll say that right now.
You might be, or I might.
You got
it. All right. So, but this album is an example of something you said, Brandon. It's never been classic for me, but it's better than good. But I've never, and I think about like the year it came out in and albums I like better than it. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, Renz, but again, and my reasoning will be similar to that of the previous choice. So an album that doesn't hit me as a classic, but it's just a good album, is Little Brother's The Minstrel Show.
Woo!
Yes. I know that's one that, like, I'm not supposed to say that. So for you know, just to like level set here, it's not a bad album. It's not a trash album. I'm not even saying any of that. Fonte is one of the best rappers then and now. And Big Pooh is dope, even though he constantly gets the big boy treatment to the Andre 3000. But my reasoning where I would put, so let's say if we were source, you know, miking this, right? I wouldn't give it a 5 out of 5. I'd probably give it, like, for me, it's a 4 out of 5. My reasoning is the same for Hell Hath No Fury. I think the production for it is overrated. Now, remember, overrated doesn't always mean trash, right? Like, for me, I think the Hell Hath No Fury production is almost sometimes borderline trash, but I won't pull that trigger yet. The production is overrated. Renzo, you know, like, well, I think you guys have known, like, I think Ninth Wonder can be very hit or miss. Sometimes when he's on, you know, he's got those soul samples on lock, but then sometimes he does what I've said before. he has, particularly with this album, he has what I call like the Swiss Beats isms. You know how like those, when you think of your typical Swiss beat that you just hate, is those certain drums and whistles. There's certain things he uses from his library that's just like, stop using that. You know what I'm saying? And Ninth Wonder for me, both on the listening and on the minstrel show, has his things like that. Is usually his drums. And even Fonte on the minstrel show comments how people are like, Ninth, change your drums.
Oh,
you know what I'm
snares,
saying?
yeah.
Like, so that's been a constant criticism. What carries this album, what makes this album still good, are the rappers and the concept. You know, it flows. You can throw the album on and play beginning to end. There's a concept there. Renz, you know, I've always said I like the listening better, and it's mainly because of the production. I think Ninth was the beats I enjoy the more
fresh.
on the
Listening
listening.
so fresh.
Yeah, the listening, and I think maybe I'm just drawn to the whole radio concept more. But I just like, you know, again, this is a very me, and I'm not throwing this album out there just to be fake controversial, and it's not like I secretly love it and I'm like, let me just pick something, you know what I mean? I've just never been able to, like, for me, put it in that classic thing, but I know the things that people like, the concept and the artists, you know what I'm saying? Put it like this, right? Ninth Wonder, right? He's known as, like, you know, for the soul samples and stuff, right? This album came out in 2005. Do you guys feel that sonically this album sits at the same table of another album that used soul samples that came out in 2005 that we've been mentioning all throughout tonight? Common's Beat. Do you think Minstrel Show, and this is an honest question, do you think Minstrel Show, just like Ninth Wonder versus the production Kanye gave Common for Beat, and Dilla had a song on there, do you think they're on the same level? Because I don't think they are. I think Kanye outclassed Ninth Wonder in 2005 easily. But I don't know if you guys feel that way. You guys may say, no, Ray, you're on crack. Like,
here's the thing. I'm not mad at your choice only because I will fight tooth and nail and tell people that the Minstrel Show would never touch the listening. Even as repetitive, you know, how Ninth Wonder beats were, I think that's still their best album, period, out of anything in their catalog. I think with Minstrel Show, even though it wasn't truly a commercial sound, for that era, and I'll speak more for myself at this point, at that era, I was strictly listening more for indie and underground acts. I really gave up on mainstream outside of our, you know, outside of some of our peers.
Ja Rule had left the game. He needed to go somewhere else.
So in life.
Yeah, with that said, even though Knife wasn't going for that quote unquote commercial sound, it was a commercial sound for true little brother heads. I feel like when the Minstrel Show came out, I love the concept of the Minstrel Show. To me, so as the best song to me, period, which is Slow Down. That's my favorite Little Brother song of all time, period. Song, but I feel like the continuity was so much better on the listening, as far as vision, as far as what they were experiencing at that time. Because even when they tried to make a more commercial sound, Atlanta didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't know how to market them. BET said their music was too intelligent for our folks, which that's another episode within itself. Because that goes self-hatred at that point. But you black niggas entertainment.
I wasn't gonna say it, but okay.
You still within the family.
Yo, but Fifth in Fashion. That's the thing. There's things about the album to like. Like, you can hear where Fonte's humor was clearly at the forefront of it. The Percy Miracles went to the window, to the wall, skeeting, like, hilarious. That's why I listened to this album as recently as today because I was like, Ray, you sure? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what? And I realized that for me, you know what's funny? My goal wasn't to pick albums where it's like, oh, I think the production's overrated. It just so happened that when I narrowed it down, I had other albums, and I narrowed it down to these two. I noticed I was just like, damn, you really have a thing about beats, because like I love Neptunes, but I didn't like what they did for Hell Hath No Fury. I like Ninth Wonder. I've said what it is I don't like about him. I think he has a dope collective now in the Soul Council. I think I've heard they had a dope compilation that came out like 2 years ago. What was that called, Renz?
You saw the Jamal Volume 2?
The Jamla joint. Yeah, I thought that was a solid joint. That was like a 20-track joint.
Yeah, what's the Jamla track?
Yeah, but I would have to say that. Well, let me ask you this. I'm gonna ask you this because I almost threw this album up in place of this one, but when I listened to it, I was like, it's gonna be a harder sell, and I think I appreciated it a little bit more today. What's the better concept album, the Minstrel Show or Good Kid, Mad City?
Concept wise, either one can go, but I think concept wise, especially for a major debut album, quote unquote, I still give the slight edge to Good Kid, Mad City because it's going to base off the whole day. Him getting to the wrong crowd, him saying I'm a good kid, but now you start seeing the Mad City aspect of what he's going through that day. As far as now, he's blood affiliate. He's not blood, but he's blood affiliate. But now he's chilling with Bloods, getting his stuff. Now he's in the Crip neighborhood.
And the sequencing's like Pulp Fiction, where it's not in order.
Yeah. So, not to say nothing was wrong with the Mitchell Show dynamic, because it's still.
I'm waiting for Brandon to do. You remember at the end of the Minstrel Show when Fonte, he's like, "You want to know how I really feel?" I'm waiting for Brandon to do that right now. He's like, "I can't stand this bald-headed Puerto Rican." Like,
Listen, I'll put you like this, Brandon. Before Listen,
I was almost gonna put Good Kid, Mad City here, but like I said, when I listened to it today, like for me, Good Kid, I was just like, nah, I would still like 4.5 out of 5. I realized that I like Good Kid more than the Minstrel Show, and I know it's taboo to like. That's another thing when it comes to, and this could be another topic when it comes to like mainstream and independent, right? There's a circle of people, and we've talked about this, where like you can't say nothing bad about the independent act because they act like they're off limits. People act like, and I'm just like, no, like if you're truly gonna assess something, you got to give everything a fair one, and even if we don't agree.
And I respect you for like even taking the goal to even like have.
Yeah, I was just like, that's why I left it second. I wasn't leading off with that.
I'm not mad at the decision. And before you get there, I just want to jump on one thing. Had Listen never came out, I might not agree with you with the Minstrel Show, just because I felt the listening was so more on point, and that's where I kind of basing it off of. If Listen doesn't happen, and let's say Little Brother's first album is the Minstrel Show, then I'm shaking my head with Brandon at you.
He said at you.
You know what I mean? So
who
I'm
else?
looking strictly because of what they did off the listening. That's my gauge right there. And we're talking about that year, especially. You can't argue about the year when they
the perception might get altered. Yeah, if they lead off with this album, the perception maybe gets altered. I think for me, and look, all our ears are different. I think Ninth only goes to a certain point for me. But like I said, it's weird because Ninth, there's certain times where he has a beat, and I'm like that's it's fire. And then I hear beats, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Like he's just one of those. It's the same thing like with Swiss Beats. When he has one, I love it. But when it's off, it's like Braveheart Party all over again. It's like, why would you make this, and why would anyone pick this? You know what I mean? Like,
all right, Little Brother fans, I don't agree with these people. I don't agree. Don't put me in this water. Before we move on, I would just keep it brief.
Go ahead.
I think the Minstrel Show was the evolution of sound. I think it's almost better than the listening. I think the listening is like dope. It's special. You know what I mean? It's a classic. But when I listen to the two albums, the listening is like bare bones to me. It's like real simple. Like it's that real. We know. Like at this, Ninth was just on a.
I got the listening off Discogs.
He's on Fruity. Yeah, there we go, baby.
I had to get it off Discogs. Yeah.
But like Ninth was on Fruity Loops, bro. Like he was doing.
That's a free. For anybody that doesn't know, that was a free DAW. Like the software that people use to produce and mix and master their music, that was for free. You could download it online. He used free software, and regardless of what I think of it, they careers were launched because of it.
Masterpiece. But when I listen to the Minstrel Show, it just has it's a evolution of sound. We'll move on though.
All right, so just to kind of bring it home. All right, so answer me this: what two albums, for the albums that you picked that you're like, yo, I don't think they belong in the conversation. What two albums, and you could throw both out just real quick. What two albums would you put that you feel like, yo, this is a classic, and it's just not getting the attention? It just didn't get it for whatever reason. Maybe because it wasn't backed by a major, maybe the era, maybe it got pushed back so much that it lost its steam. What are like two albums that you're like, yo, they could take the place of the two? They could take the place of the Rick Ross joints and the Get Rich or Die Trying from 50. Where
for me, I went with the Game documentary 2.
The double CD.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that album when it came out. It was heavy. It was heavy loaded. as far as like tracks and like it didn't need to be a double disc. But I feel like if you take out the fat of that album, I mean, I think it's game almost at its best. I'm probably at its best, you know, like if you want to compare it to Doctor's Advocate, or if you want to go like documentary. But I remember in that moment, like I'm like, yo, I wasn't running around saying that it was a classic, but I remember feeling like that was a special LP. So the game documentary, and I'm gonna go Talib Gravitas.
Wait, real quick. You said games documentary or documentary 2? I forgot.
Documentary 2.
Oh, the second one. Okay, my bad. Okay, all right.
Second.
And then you said your second one is Talib Kweli.
Yeah, Talib Gravitas. I feel like so when Talib went indie, because he had a string of albums like Eardrum and Beautiful Struggle,
Gutter Rainbows, yeah.
Gutter Rainbow, like solid projects. Once he went independent with Javoti Media, he put like Prisoner of Conscience, Gravitas, like he was a string of albums like every year. Gutter Rainbows was in that thread.
Mm-hmm.
I think people kind of lost. You know, it's different when you don't have Ruckus Records like backing you, you know, every other year.
Yeah, they were a top indie label. Yeah, they had resources.
Yeah. And so you lose kind of sight of like what's actually like, what should I pay attention to as the consumer? So I think Gravitas was probably the one when you look back on Talib's like latter career on solo stuff. Very solid album, man. I mean, I think it's every track is good, man. And I honestly, at the time, I'm like, yo, this is dope. But now looking back, I'm like, yeah, he got everything rings. Every track rings.
So those two definitely. So games documentary 2, Talib Kweli's Gravitas can easily for you replace Get Rich or Die Trying and the Rick Ross joints at the table, like easily, no questions asked.
Yeah, and slow and steady.
All right, and Ren,
it's funny you mentioned. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I was gonna say throw your 2 up, but go ahead.
Oh yeah. It's funny you mentioned Talib because when Gravitas first came out, that was what I was telling you. Like, yo, this is at work because you were still on Prisoner of Consciousness. Remember, they both came out the same year.
Yeah, yo, he was running them all.
And the first thing I said was like, yo, this is the one. And I like Prisoner of Consciousness, but off the first listen, the vibe was just to me was so much more organic with him and the producer he was dealing with versus Prisoner of Consciousness. And he had Rizzo on Prisoner of Consciousness. So that's not even saying like he had bad producers. I just felt like he had the better producer that fit his style.
Yeah, Sean P was on Prisoner of Consciousness. Yeah, Gravitas.
Exactly.
Sure.
I'll do my 2. Both of mine are both Loud Records alumni.
Okay.
So my first one, I would say Exhibit, 40 Days and 40 Nights.
Nice. West Coast.
West Coast. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the different eras. Microwave versus a cook-baked meal and streaming. You know, so Exhibit.
I'm gonna stream that tonight.
The only downfall Exhibit had was he came out in the wrong year. He came out 98. And we talk about 98, we already know we got Capital Punishment. We got both DMX's album. We got Hard Knock Life, My Lifetime Volume 2.
Outkast, Lauryn Hill.
Lauryn, you had such a congested year where I think the average person, I'll say more the casual fan, could not appreciate a 40 Days and 40 Nights, off the back. And it goes back to streaming because, like, with Exhibit, I knew who Exhibit was, but I forgot he was a West Coast rapper. So when I got reintroduced to him for the second album, I'm assuming he's New York just the way he's rapping. Because he's on more boom bap production, more soul. He's not really on the G-Funk. Like, you don't really get no G-Funk vibes from his first 2 albums. That's when you got more with Dre. Third, fourth album, whatever. First 2 albums, if you know he was from LA, you would never guess he was from LA. You would think if he wasn't from New York, you figured he was somewhere.
If you told me he was Midwest, I would believe that too.
He's from Detroit. He was born in Detroit.
So okay. So that makes sense because he has a Midwest.
He's a hybrid.
Yeah, and Detroit's a hybrid. So you hear influence everywhere from Detroit more than any other particular section of the country. Because you can get the down south vibes, you can get the East Coast vibes, you get the West Coast vibe of Detroit more than any other, to me, major city. So he was like B-Sack said, he's a hybrid in that sense. But this hearing what you get now, even with the video, and just listen to the rest of the album, like the pictures he was painting at that point, Like, had there not been Capital Punishment, Dark Hell is Hot, we be talking about that as a classic like this versus like we gotta think about it. You know,
So some
I'm at
classics
the-
can be realized
yeah,
later. That's something I don't
realize
think
it.
we said.
And I
They
feel
can.
like, that was realized later. But at the wall, when I'm listening to before, you remember you can listen to albums before you can buy it.
Yeah.
I said like, hey, this is a top tier album. From the lyrics to the production, top tier album. It's just that you got so many mega stars that year that they got
That's fair.
swept under the rug.
Fair.
And then real quick, I'll put my second one out there. Also, Loud and Not. I won't say it was bad timing because it was bad. It wasn't bad timing for them. It was bad timing for us, the proletariat. And that's Dead Prez. Let's get free. Like
Banger.
to this day.
You put me onto that one.
Classic.
Yeah,
That's the one with like mind sex and shit, right? Like
exactly.
yeah.
To this day, like you said,
Well, we've been on that.
We're a mix of NWA and PE, and literally they were. If you the argument with PE was people didn't think they were gangster enough or street enough. The argument with NWA for certain conscious folks is that they're a little too vulgar. That Prez had both with the best of NWA, best of PE, but they trimmed the fat.
They're insightful.
They were insightful. Yeah, exactly. And me and B-Sack seen Dead Prez several times live, and that's the energy, that's the vibe that I get for any Dead Prez show. Is so much unlike other shows that we see, especially from artists that we see multiple times. Because that's the organic feel overall. But I think for them, it's a couple of factors here. We weren't ready for that at that time. We were the bling bling cat, or or the Ultra Street. We weren't ready for that in between. That like their second album was revolutionary but gangster music. We weren't ready for that at that point. Fat Joe even said they were ready. He said, you remember I saw the album cover, like first thing he said was that Loud Records is not gonna allow you to have child soldier with guns as your album cover. That's the first thing he said, because he said, I love the album.
Jopra.
But off the strength of that cover, he's like, y'all not gonna make no waves because the cover is too controversial. And he was right in that sense. But at the same time, I think we're delusional thinking that everything was good. Everything was more, let's say, quote unquote, balance, and we're looking at the facade based on what we're seeing in the video. We're seeing media that boom 9/11 happens, and then we start now seeing the ugly thing of racism, again, the ugly thing of the top tiers between the proletarian, who's oppressed, who's not oppressed, who's the elitist. And they were on that level. But at that time, we're like, oh, but you don't got the gaudy chains on. You ain't talking about the hose you got. You ain't talking about this. And we kind of sidetracked it. But looking back at it now, you don't have it in Moral Technique. You don't have Run the Jewels. You don't have that, the Run the Jewels stream, run. You don't have the Revolutionary Volume series from Moral Technique based on what Dead Prez is putting out there, because it wasn't cool to be on that level. Like in 98, 99, 2000.
That's worked with like quite a few people. They got a collabo with Jay. They were on Pun's debut. Down the Beatnuts Musical Massacre. Like they worked with a couple people. You know what I'm saying? Like they're definitely,
they were out there, But like I said, and they got the brand Nubian connection to Lord Jamal. So like they were out there, but like I said, where we were at as a society in our projection of what hip hop should look like, as far as everything else, we weren't ready for that, and then we came ready, but after the fact, because to me they got the Elmatic effect where they had dope music since their first album, but that first album was so good. Production, lyrics, content, everything else. I look at the other albums like,
That was a curse.
I'm judging this based off that first album because it was that great.
Kind of was a curse here.
So you said Exhibit 40 Days, 40 Nights,
and Dead Prez,
Let's Get Free can replace any Drake and Lil Wayne album, if we're being honest. I ain't mad at that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna throw my two out, and there's a theme here, and they're kind of for the same reason. All right. So the albums that I like that I said I would remove are Clips, Hell Hath No Fury, and Minstrel Show. Like for me, they're not classics. They're just Minstrel. So what would I replace both of those albums with? Q-Tip's The Renaissance.
Oh, thought about that.
Yeah, that's best rap album of 2008. Love that album. And my second one was, ironically, I didn't know this was gonna happen. Tribe Called Quest 2016 album with the incredibly long title. We got it from here. Thank you for your service. And I say it's for the same reason, so I'm gonna try to like bunch them together. You have Q-Tip, who is the maestro behind both his solo project and the group project. He's at this point in his life, he's like pushing his 40s, going into his 40s, and he was able to use a sound that is true to the Tribe Called Quest aesthetic. And Brandon, I'll defer to you for anything Tribe Called Quest. You have my favorite picture up, the oil painting of the Low End Theory. But between the Renaissance and the last group album they did, he was able to put out oversee an album that has the Tribe feel, the Tribe aesthetic. And he didn't have to compromise with today's sound at all. He didn't have to tap a new producer like, yo, make me hot. No, he built on his catalog and their catalog with their sound, and he knocked it out the park. And he did it as somebody who's over 20 years in at this point. Yeah. And he had albums that, in both instances, for me, were the best albums of those years. And they're 8 years apart. Renaissance in 2008, the Tribe album in 2016. The Tribe album, especially with their last album, there was 18 years between their albums, right? Who the hell would have thought that they could have made an album that was not only good, but I think was better than like the previous two from their prime? The Love Movement and Beats, Rhymes, and Life. I think that last one is better than those last two that they left off at. So do you know how hard it is to do that? I asked that rhetorically because we know how hard that is. You have an 18-year gap between the album, and then you have like an 8-9 year gap between your solo album, and you make better work. Mm-hmm. You don't hear that. That doesn't happen oftentimes. Mm-hmm. And I love that he stayed true to the Tribe aesthetic and he knocked it out the park. He did what he was good at. He stuck to it, and it didn't sound dated, forced, or like they were trying to live in past glory. It was a refreshed approach to something that Tribe fans wanted to hear. So those I will always and easily put over the Minstrel Show and Clips Hell Hath No Fury. Those are my two.
Damn, I gotta take back my rebuke. I take back my cross.
Yeah, I would definitely I love those. I love those, and those were my favorite albums of their respective years. So
and I would say like I agree with everything you said. I don't think a lot of us, even all the Tribe fans, thought that it could be done. Like they could put an album that was playable, back out on the scene. And so like I got a native tongue theme to this next. So I'm gonna let Ray. I'm gonna let off this next lightning round. You know what I mean? I'm ready to go.
Okay. All right. So we gave our picks. All right. So and that's the thing. You mentioned native tongues, and I know that Little Brother's supposed to be like. I can see how they're a descendant of them. But I got Tribe over Little Brother any day of the week. I don't think they got the catalog to touch Tribe at all. With that said, lightning round. We've been talking about classics and all of that today. Which artist, group, or posse, whatever, in hip hop has the most classics? This is just right. There's no right or wrong answer. Who do y'all think has?
So let me go first real quick. Cause I don't want to answer last segment.
He said I'm gonna let you finish.
real quick.
Is it Tribe?
Okay. As we just relate, Ray's ready to try real quick, and
we all on Tribe. Then go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So when you were talking about the last album, the last Tribe album came out. Here's my question for you, Ray, and this is strictly for you. Now, when we were talking about like the best decade albums, you had that as your best decade. Mm-hmm. So with that said, then could you put that at that time at least as a classic during that time frame? So are you saying now that Life is Good and Good Kid, Mad City were better than that? Because you didn't mention those as an album that should be removed from that segment, but you mentioned Tribe though. So I'm just curious.
Wait, did I mention which? Oh, did you saying because I didn't put Good Kid, Mad City?
Yeah, you put Mad City, you put Life is Good.
I said, you know what I said? The reason why I didn't put it is because I found an album that I felt more was like a little bit on that side. For me, Good Kid, Mad City, I got it at like that 4.5, 5. I think it's a better album than that. Life is Good is another one that was like 4.5 out of 5 for me. That's why I always stood with what's it called? Good Kid, Mad City was originally like a 4 for me. It's more like a 4.5 now. Life is Good has maintained its 4.5. I can't quite put it with the Illmatic and It Was Written, but I love Life is Good. But I think what Tribe did for their catalog with that album edges out like again, Love Life is good. I like Good Kid, Mad City, but of those three, I think Tribe probably has the strongest project there. You know?
Yeah. All right. With that said, then, and we talk because I remember you talking about we were talking about solo, we were talking about group, we were talking about posses. For me, when I looked at solos, everybody to me, unless we went to further debate on what could be and what could not be, we're maxing out round 3. I had that for Jay, I had that for Nas, I had that for Kanye. Come on, even Kendrick, and
that's where I'm at too. I couldn't get above 3.
Yeah. I think Kanye, if we're talking about in general, I think he had the 1-3 in a row. I think he had the trifecta, where all the other artists really didn't really have that. What made consensus. What I will say is, if we're talking about strictly posses now, I think you got to go with Wu. I don't think there's nobody else you can go with Wu, because that was talking about.
Are you talking about like how many solos? Like,
I thought you were talking about how many solos, who had the most solos.
But you know what I mean? But I'm sorry, I didn't specify this. I mean, like, but if you're saying Wu, like, I would have been like, are you talking about the like 36 chambers and everything else after that? Or are you talking about like Ghost has 5, Raekwon
well,
has
I was
5?
saying, but remember, but I'm talking about not so much the aspect of group or solo. I'm talking about the aspect of posse.
You said posse too.
Okay,
because
I see what you're saying.
And that's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as
no, well, posse, I meant like my bad. Like when Boot Camp Clip, when they get together and they make an album, I meant like that.
Oh,
like,
you're talking about like a posse album. Okay,
that's what I meant.
Posse,
that's yeah.
I
didn't
get a group and a solo, because if so, I would say you can't go against.
Nah, because I think that's gonna like push numbers up. Nah, I'm talking about like so I'll just say this, like group or
I still had Tribe is still my pick anyway.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about solo, I think everybody, our main guys max out at 3. Like I said, I see Nas with 3, I see Jay with 3, I see Kanye with 3, especially if we're talking about 3 in a row.
Yeah,
Kanye 3 in a row before anybody else.
Kanye got more than 3, man.
You know, well, yeah, I'm talking about even just 3 in a row. I'll say his first 3 albums are classic. I can't say his first 3 Nas albums are classic. I can't say the first Jay-Z album 3 albums classic. I can say Kanye with a straight face, regardless of how I feel about him now. That his first 3 albums are all classics. I can't.
I said Kanye has more classic albums than Jay. And
well, I'm saying, but I'm just talking about this 3 in a row at this point.
So wait, now I'm curious. So Brandon,
I'm not saying they have more. I'm just saying just 3 in a row, period. Because I could argue that Nas has more, but more than 3. But talking about 3 in a row. Oh well, that's what it's for. Yeah.
So wait, I want to hear. B-Stack's been building it up. What were your answers as far as most classics?
So I was going to go Native Tongues, like posse. You know what I'm saying? But you just
that's a whole cheat code. Yeah, that's gonna.
Yeah, it is like a lot of people. Because you got De La, you got Black Sheep,
you got Jones Brothers. Yeah,
they tried even beating us. If you want to throw beating us, they're Native Tongues.
I wouldn't even use beating us, but yeah, that's like too much at that point. Yeah. But I mean, pick your poison, man. I mean, De La or Tribe. You know what I mean? I think De La's got 3, and I think Tribe's got 3 classic. Underneath each belt. So it's like if you want to go De La, you got
3 Feet High Rising.
3 Feet. You got Stakes is High. You got De La Soul's Dead. I mean, you can even go in the later, catalog. Tribe. You got Midnight. You got Low End. You know what I mean? You got first album, Past Instinctives. You got even this last one. Like it's whatever. It's like a video game, yo. Player one.
To me, I think Outkast is in that conversation too.
No doubt.
I think Outkast is easily in that conversation. And we're talking about groups now, duels, whatever, however you want to.
Yeah, Outkast has got to
define them. I think Outkast is easily in that conversation.
Yeah, Outkast got a good.
And Tribe, oftentimes they get like compared because it's like, yo, the quality, their volume to quality ratio is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they got 10 albums and only 2 are good. Like they have like, like if they got like 5 each, it's like to have 3 of those at least be classics. That's a very high percentage. You know what I mean? Of their catalog to be deemed not just good, but outstandingly good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree with you guys in that, like as far as like really like I don't think anybody has more than 3. I think if we were to go into like personal preference, then you can say somebody has more. Yeah. I think you can. But if you split what happened?
I think Ye's got more than 3.
I still think it's solid 3, but that's just my opinion.
I think Ye's got more than 3, and
what's his 4th? I think I already know the 3. What's his 4th then?
So you going with his first 3 albums? You saying are classics?
Yeah, I'll look at my Twisted Dark Fantasy as a classic. I think that if we're talking about production, something like that, I don't still view that as a classic album.
That's a classic.
You like it as I like the album. I'm like Renzo. I enjoy the other three more, but I know what it is people like about it.
Yeah.
He had the budget for the production, the mixing and mastering. Everything sounds amazing, but like for me, and this is just like dark motif Kanye versus the college era him was I preferred, and I get it, life changes and stuff, but where he was at, I guess, in his life with those three albums, and maybe where I was at in life too. There's something about those first three, especially like his first album is my favorite. But I would argue that Dark Fantasy is better sequenced and more cohesive than College Dropout. But College Dropout got songs like Last Call, you know what I mean? Stuff like that I
think he got 4, I have to
a lot of people.
I don't think he got, maybe 5. I gotta like now 5, I gotta really look. But I think that with me too, what helped me with Kanye is I always gave him a year. What I mean by that is like with Raekwon, I do that when Raekwon drop an album, what he's saying. So with Raekwon is more lyrically. What he's saying lyrically, I give myself a year to actually understand and get what he's actually saying, other than what it sounds good. So with Kanye, I always gave after Graduation because I didn't understand Graduation when it dropped.
I mean, you were on the physical Graduation.
I didn't get it when it came out. I did not get it. And I said, yo, man, I trust this guy's method. Like he did me right 2 times back to back. So I said, after that point, it took me a year to get Graduation and to grasp it. I said, after that, I'm gonna give my brother a whole year. If I don't get it in a year, cool. And then Dark Twisted, it was the same damn thing, man. You know what I mean?
All right. So you feel Kanye is the one guy that has more than 3. Yeah. I'm still currently stuck at like everybody that I like. Cause like, and for me, that's also a thing where like, I just think like this modern era hands out GOAT and classic labels like nothing, like candy.
Like water.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and album will be 60 minutes long and they'll be tweeting about it 30 minutes after it's been out then it's a classic. And I'm just like, no, like, so
like Mortal Kombat, just like
West Side Gun.
Exactly. West Side Gun, he has the best catalog ever, and people actually agree with that. Anyway, all right, guys. I know this is a lengthy episode because you know what it is. This is the kind of topic that you can have in a barbershop, and you're gonna kill 2 hours like easily, and that's what it is. These can go in several directions. You know what I'm saying? So, we're just gonna wrap it up. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for peeping the episodes. We got some controversial choices here. We're gonna put some interesting clips up for this one as well. Probably lose a couple of followers on Instagram because of it. So
I love little brother.
So and guys, let us know. This will be up on YouTube. Let us know in the comment section. Do you agree with our choices? Did we leave any out? Like who has 6 classics not named Sky Zoo? Let us know.
Hell no.
Man.
All right, and with that said, Tres Leches is out. Peace, gentlemen.
Peace.